I'm 90 years old and I need to tell you something that sounds ugly when you say it plainly. Loneliness isn't always something that happens to you. Sometimes you earn it, slowly, by the way you live. I'm not saying that to blame anyone who's alone. I'm saying it because I've spent enough nights in a quiet house to know the difference between bad luck and bad habits. My mornings start before I want them to. At this age, sleep doesn't feel like rest. It feels like something you keep losing in small pieces. I sit up and wait for my body to agree with me. My hands are stiff. My knees complain. I shuffle to the kitchen and put water on, because making tea gives me something simple to do that has a beginning and an end. The house is still, not peaceful, just still. There was a time I loved quiet. I used to come home from work and crave it the way a thirsty man craves water. Now I hear it differently. Now the quiet sounds like all the doors I didn't knock on, all the calls I didn't return, all the invitations I declined because I was tired or proud or convinced I'd do it next time. At 90, you stop trusting next time. People picture loneliness as a sudden thing. A spouse dies. A friend moves away. Children get busy. And yes, those things are real. But I'm talking about the slow kind. The kind you build out of small choices that seem harmless on their own. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to be alone. I just spent decades choosing the easiest version of every relationship. I didn't realize that easy often means shallow, and shallow things dry up. If you had met me when I was younger, you might have called me independent, reliable, private, not needy. Those were compliments in my world. Where I grew up, you didn't lean on people too much. You didn't talk about feelings unless something was on fire. You kept your problems neat, kept your voice steady, kept your pride intact. My father believed in work, not conversation. He wasn't cruel, but he wasn't soft either. He showed love by paying bills and fixing things. If you wanted warmth, you found it elsewhere. My mother was quieter than she deserved to be. She moved through the house like she was trying not to take up space. When she sat down at night, you could see the day on her face. That was my first education in loneliness. Not the kind where you're abandoned. The kind where you're surrounded by people who don't know how to reach each other. So I learned to manage myself. I learned to be fine. I learned to answer questions with facts instead of truth. When I got older and left home, I carried that with me like it was a character. I took pride in being the man who didn't bother others. I got married in my 20s. She was more social than me. She kept in touch with people. She remembered birthdays. She sent cards. She asked questions that weren't just polite. At the beginning, I found it comforting. She handled the world of relationships, and I handled the world of work. That division felt normal. It felt efficient. I worked hard. I provided. I fixed things around the house. I paid attention to numbers, mortgage, savings, insurance. I thought that was love. And it was, in its way. But love that doesn't talk becomes something else. It becomes routine. It becomes logistics. We had children. 2. I remember holding them as babies and feeling fear rise up in me. Not fear them. Fear of failing them. Fear of not being enough. Instead of turning toward my family when I felt that fear, I turned toward work. Work had rules. Work had clear rewards. Work didn't ask me to be emotionally clumsy. My wife tried to keep us connected. She'd suggest dinners with neighbors. She'd host small gatherings. She'd say, "Let's invite so-and-so over," and I'd sigh like it was an extra chore. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just didn't understand what she was building. She was building a net, a web of people that holds you when life starts taking things away. I thought I didn't need it. I thought being self-sufficient was strength. I remember sitting on the couch some evenings while my wife talked on the phone to her sister or a friend. She'd laugh, she'd listen, she'd say, "I'm sorry," in a soft voice when someone shared a hard story. And I'd sit there, pretending not to hear, feeling a little irritated at the noise. Now I would give anything to hear that noise again. The slow cost of my way of living didn't show up right away. That's the trick. When you're young, your life is full by default. You have coworkers. You have schedules. You have obligations. You can mistake busyness for connection. I did. There were coworkers I ate lunch with for years and never truly knew. There were neighbors whose names I learned only after they moved away. There were friendships my wife maintained that I treated like background music. When my children were teenagers, my habit of emotional distance became visible. They didn't come to me with problems. They went to their mother. I told myself that was normal. Kids and mothers, fathers and discipline. That's how people talked back then. But the truth was simpler. I had trained them, not with speeches, with patterns. When my daughter tried to talk and I answered with advice instead of listening, she learned I was not the place for feelings. When my son showed me something he was proud of, and I looked at it too quickly, he learned I was not the place for being seen. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't abusive. I was just absent in the quiet ways that don't get dramatic labels. And those quiet absences add up. My wife would sometimes say, "They miss you," and I'd answer, "I'm right here." I meant it. But being in the same room is not the same as being reachable. A child knows the difference. As the years went on, my wife kept the family together. She called, she arranged holidays, she remembered anniversaries. She made sure we showed up. I didn't understand how much I relied on her until she got sick. It started with fatigue, a cough that stayed, a look on her face that didn't go away. The doctor visits turned into more visits. Then came words we didn't want to hear. During her illness, people showed up. Her friends, her sister, neighbors with casseroles, even people I barely knew came by because she had invested in them for years. I stood in my own kitchen, watching those people talk to her, and I felt something complicated. Gratitude, yes, but also a realization I couldn't admit yet. These people weren't showing up for me, they were showing up for her, because she had given them something real: time, attention, warmth, care. When she died, that net held me for a little while. People called, people visited, people asked if I was eating, if I was sleeping. And I did what I'd always done. I said, "I'm fine." I said it even when I wasn't. I didn't cry in front of anyone. I didn't know how. I let people bring food, and I thanked them, and then I waited for them to leave. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I didn't know how to be open without feeling exposed. Grief is heavy, but grief with pride on top is heavier. My children came around after their mother died. They tried. They called more in the beginning. They checked in. They handled paperwork. They helped clear out closets. But after a while, their lives pulled them back. Work, kids, obligations. That's normal. What wasn't normal was how little there was left between us when the reason to call disappeared. My wife had been to the bridge. Without her, there was just me, an old man who didn't know how to talk beyond the surface. I realized something painful. I didn't have friendships of my own, not real ones. I had acquaintances, men I'd worked with, men I'd nodded at in the driveway, men I'd talked sports with, weather with, politics with. But when my wife died, those conversations didn't translate into companionship because they weren't built for that. Loneliness doesn't arrive on the day someone dies. Sometimes it arrives years earlier in the form of conversations you never had. After my wife was gone, the house changed. Every room felt too big. I stopped cooking real meals, not because I couldn't, but because cooking for one felt like admitting something I didn't want to admit. I ate toast, soup, cereal, easy things. I started leaving the television on even when I wasn't watching it, not for entertainment, for sound, for the illusion that someone else was present. Then friends began to disappear, not from arguments, from time to time. A neighbor down the street died. A man I used to wave to while taking out trash, dead. His house was sold. New people moved in who didn't know my name. A co-worker passed. A heart attack. Quick. Another moved to be near family. Another stopped driving and stopped coming out. It happens like that, one by one. And if you haven't been careful, you look up and realize you're standing in a world that used to have faces in it, and now it has empty spaces. I tried, in my way, to keep control. I told myself I preferred solitude. That's what pride does. It turns loss into a choice so you don't have to feel helpless. But then came the turning point for me. Not my wife's death. That was grief. The turning point was a small moment that shouldn't have mattered, but did. My grandson, he was maybe 9 or 10 then, came over with my daughter. He was restless, like kids are. He wandered through the living room looking at old photos. He picked up a framed picture of my wife and me from years ago. He looked at it for a while and asked my daughter, "Was Grandpa always this quiet?" My daughter didn't answer right away. She glanced at me like she didn't know what would hurt me more, the truth or the lie. Then she said gently, "Yeah, mostly." My grandson nodded like it explained something and put the picture back. And I sat there, hearing my whole life reduced to one word: quiet. Not kind, not warm, not funny, quiet. It wasn't an insult, it was a description. And that's when I understood something I'd been dodging. The loneliness I was living in wasn't just bad luck. It was the natural outcome of a life lived behind a wall. I had built that wall brick by brick. Every time I said, "I'm fine," instead of "I'm struggling." Every time I avoided a phone call because I didn't want to be awkward. Every time I let my wife do the emotional work and told myself I didn't need to. I earned the quiet, slowly. After that day, I tried to change. Not in a grand way. I'm too old for grand. I tried to call my son without needing a reason. Sometimes it went well, sometimes it didn't. I tried to ask my daughter questions and then shut up long enough to hear the real answers. Sometimes she shared, sometimes she stayed polite. And I realized another hard truth. You can't build 30 years of closeness in one season. People have lives. People have memories. They have patterns you taught them. If you taught them you're not a person to lean on, they don't suddenly unlearn it because you've gotten older and softer. There are things that can't be fixed now. I can't go back and be the father who listened properly when my children were small. I can't undo the times I looked past them toward my own stress. I can't give my wife the version of me she deserved when she was alive. and I can't recover the friendships I never truly built. You can't call an acquaintance from 20 years ago and say, "Would you like to be close now?" That's not how life works. The heavy part of old age is learning what time refuses to negotiate. Money can be earned again. Houses can be sold. Apologies can sometimes be accepted. But time is one way. It doesn't return your missed evenings. It doesn't return your unsaid words. If you're listening to me, I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I don't know your family. I don't know your burdens. I'm only telling you what I know from the inside. Loneliness isn't always a punishment. Sometimes it's just the result of choosing distance over and over until distance becomes the only thing you know. I used to think independence was the highest form of strength. Now I think it can be a hiding place. I used to think asking for company was a weakness. Now I think it's human. I used to think saying "I miss you" was embarrassing. Now I think it's just honest. I wish I had been more honest earlier. Not in speeches, in small ways. I wish I had sat with people without needing to do something. I wish I had called my brother just to hear his voice. I wish I had told friends I'm not doing great when I wasn't. Because here's what happens if you don't. People stop checking. Not because they don't care, but because you teach them you don't want to be reached. That's what I did. And now I live with the lesson. My days are quiet. I go to the store. I came home. I eat something simple. I take my pills. I sit by the window. Sometimes my phone rings, and I answer too fast, and then I try to sound casual so nobody hears how much that sound matters to me. If this story meant something to you and you're willing, you can leave a thought behind. Not to comfort me, just so it doesn't feel like I said it into nothing. I'm 90. I don't have illusions about how much time is left. I'm not trying to reinvent myself. I'm just trying to tell the truth while I still can. At 90, I finally see why loneliness is earned, slowly. It's earned in small dismissals, small delays, small prideful silences. And once you've earned it, it sits with you, faithful as a shadow, even when you don't want company anymore.